What I want to talk about to you is about an article which I recently published in a journal called International Journal of Urban and Regional Research, and this article is about shrines in Goa, wayside shrines. And more specifically, I want to talk about the remarkable popularity which these shrines enjoy, and they enjoy it particularly in the urban environment. And why is this at all notable that they are enjoying this popularity? Well, I'll give you three reasons. One is these are, and architectural students will do this most intensely, will realize that these are actually very simple, very marginal religious monuments compared to the other religious monuments you find, temples and churches. However, some of them really in recent years in the urban context gained so much popularity that they outdo, so to speak, they do better than the churches and the temples. So that's one reason. The other reason why it is notable, this popularity, is because they are very often at odds, as we say, with their environment, with the urban environment, both in stylistical terms. You will see they are old and they are dirty, and there's then behind and they are in the midst of a growing urban design and architectural design, and so they are stylistically at odds. They are also practically at odds very often in the sense that they are placed right in the middle of the heaviest traffic. They are almost foundering in that traffic, and still they persist. So that are reasons why I thought I started this work, and I started picking them. Of course, it also needs to be mentioned, they are huge in numbers. There are so many of them that you cannot even start counting them. So I got attracted into these structures, and I studied them. Well, then to kind of make my point, then I wanted to ask and answer the question, why this popularity of these minor, marginal monuments. But before I enter this question and ask this question, I wanted to say a little bit about the urban context, and I want to say, or I want to make the argument that Goa is undergoing, in recent years, you can say since independence, when Goa got independent from Portuguese rule, that was in 1961, ever since, Goa is undergoing a very remarkable, intense process of urbanization. And in recent years, it's not only undergoing a process of urbanization, it also undergoes a process of clearly, whatever we may mean with that term, globalization also. So I wanted to give you some indicators how we can argue that Goa is undergoing this notable process of urbanization. And indicators are one, let me see, I have to check my notes and figures here. One is that the decadal urban growth in the period of 1990 to 2000 in Goa exceeds the decadal urban growth of India at large. Goa grows more or less at 30% urbanization, the growth of cities, compared to 30% in all India. So that's remarkable. More. Other indicators are other urbanization markers, such as cultural diversification, media exposition, consumer culture, and motorized traffic. Also, Goa figures are disproportionately increasing. And that means also to say here, and there Lito students would be interested, of course, this is also part and parcel of the tourist industry and the tourist boom that we are seeing here. I will talk about the number of increases in tourists and tourist arrivals here in a moment. But one thing we are seeing here is also that you have here these cultural diversification, people from different countries, different cultures come and meet here. Media exposition. Goa is in the news all the time, you can say. And recently, if you talk about media in an enlarged sense, Goa also attracts more and more media events. One of it recently was the IFFI, that is the International Film Festival of India, has come to Goa and is now doing here annually since about 3 or 4 years. So in all these urbanization markers, Goa is remarkably a shooting star, if you want so. Another thing I wanted to mention is that urbanization and urbanization-like processes developing in Goa are not only found in the vicinity of its four major cities, that is Panjim, Mapsa, Vasco da Gama, and Margao, but you find urbanization-like processes also going on in a large part of the coastal belt, what is called the tourist zone now. This is, even though this comes in many places under village administration still, but the design, the cultural diversification, the architectural design, all that is rather more urban actually than village. And to the extent that I go as far and I say, actually the whole part of what is called the Old Conquest, I'm sure you have heard this term, that part where Portuguese have established their colonialism first, the whole part of Old Conquest is turning into an enlarged urban agglomeration, you can say, in recent years. And finally, because it also feeds into my argument, another indicator is the traffic is increasing tremendously. Again, I have to check my notes here. The Goan traffic is increasing tremendously. I give you some figures here. In 1981, you have just 30,000 vehicles registered in Goa. 30,000. 10 years later, in 1990, you have registered 130,000 vehicles in Goa. Again, one decade later, now we are talking about 2000, you have registered 350,000 vehicles here, and I don't even know what it would be today. It is probably 600,000 vehicles there. So you have a tremendous increase in traffic. That's also an indicator for a sort of urbanization. Finally, an indicator for urbanization I want to show you is to be seen here. This is a very simplistic sort of a sociological composition of Goa population, which has, according to my interpretation, an urban feature. One is that heterogeneity, that mixed composition that you have, which of course is to be related first of all to the fact that you have three more or less equal parts in numbers of Goans, means people being from Goa, living in Goa, then non-resident Goans, people being from Goa but living abroad in some other place of the world, and tourists, each of them forming 1/3 of the population more or less. Then talking about this heterogeneity, here, these are just a few of the destinations, or how to say that, the places where non-resident Goans live today. They are, large number live in Mumbai, large number live in the UK, USA, Portugal, in the Gulf, in Africa, and in many other countries. So, however, these people, of course, have still a link with Goa. Many of them, for example, are investors and do business now from the money they earn abroad. So they're bringing their impact, their influences into Goa. But you also have Indian investment, of course, and Indian business growing in Goa. So that, again, we are talking about urban-like heterogenization of the population. And you have international business, obviously, coming in. Then you have retirees. That is, when we talk about tourists, that is how it all started. In fact, it started with the hippies in the late 1960s. Then it developed in a more established, what we call charter tourism from UK, Germany, and other places of the world. But now we also see a diversification of people coming from outside by those who come here to retire in Goa. And the number of retirees in India is growing all the time. This again brings a lot of projects, I cannot go into that, but it brings in housing, it brings in a sort of medical tourism. Old age people come here and get their dental work done because it's cheaper, or they get whatever other diseases treated here or in India as such. So you have really, again, what I say, a global kind of economy and sociological feature of the population coming up here. You have, of course, labor and small business coming into Goa, also now related to all this building, all this construction work, all this tourist industry needs a lot of service hands, as you know. So you have a lot of labor and small business coming in from other parts of India. Many people from Karnataka moving into Goa, many people from Maharashtra, many people from Kerala, and so on and so forth. And then to talk about a final category which kind of colors this overall very heterogeneous composition of Goan population, we talk about long-stay tourists. These are now foreign nationals who stay here in Goa for so long that they take on almost the feature of a Goan resident. You know, they buy houses, they buy land, they start business, and so on. And we have visiting NRIs. NRGs means people from the non-resident countries coming in. Anyway, this is the overall background against which I'm now getting back to my tiny little subject of the shrines. And I wanted to say here, of course, the shrines that I'm looking at are not an urban and modern phenomenon, not at all. The shrines are part of a very ancient system of relating religious monuments, religious ideas, actually gods and patron saints and so on, to a certain place, mainly a village. So you have the typical, what you call village god. This is the village goddess of a place called Kaoleng in Ponda. That is her temple, and she kind of is the religious patron of that village. This is the, what we say, Catholic parallel to it, brought by the Portuguese. This is a church in a place called Chirlim in Bardes, and this is Saint Anthony, who is the patron saint of that village. So what I'm saying, you have a very ancient connection between some religious notion, patron saint or village god, and a space that means a village. Within that, you have the space is then religiously structured. You can say that those patron saints and those village gods, they more or less occupy the center. The churches and the and the temples are in the center. However, the whole landscape of the village is dotted with small shrines which either represent a replica of the patron saint or with other minor saints or minor deities. Now, why I'm saying this? Because this, what I call an ancient pattern, it's really ancient, is again predestines certain locality for the position, the location of those shrines that I'm talking about. What are these places that most likely take those shrines? For example, are the borders, the boundaries. So the boundaries of villages, the boundary where the village field enter into the forest, these boundaries, there you find the crosses, there you find the little shrines that I'm talking about, because they more or less have the function of a protector. The Konkani word, you may know this, is Rakno or Rakne. These are somehow tutelary deities. They guard it, sometimes they have a stick in their hand and so on. Or also the crosses, you find them precisely at those places. You find them at Crossroads. That's where the title of my paper comes from. Crossroads of religion. Wherever there's a road cross, I guess, and I bet, when you are traveling these days through Goa, look and you'll find some of those shrines. They are at the crossroads. They are at the bridges. They are on the hilltops. They are on all these outstanding, conspicuous localities. Many of them are considered what we anthropologists, I'm an anthropologist by training, what we call liminal, from the Latin word limen, which means border or boundary. Liminal means at the border, at the boundary of something which is considered dangerous. So then that's why they are there. That comes from the ancient system of village gods and patron saints. Now we are moving on, and I want to talk why the shrines are actually so outstanding. Before I get there, I should give you an idea where I'm heading with my argument before I show you more of the images. What I will say in my paper eventually, and what I want to demonstrate with the pictures, is this. I'm saying even though They are part of this ancient system of religious structures, deities, saints, and gods on the one side, and spatial units, villages and other localities. Within that ancient system, the shrines keep a popularity today because they are especially appealing to the needs and concerns of a rapidly changing urban environment. People like the shrines because they help them more to fulfill their spiritual needs and concerns in the fast changing urban world of today. That is my argument. And therefore, I'll go back here, I'll try to go back to my first page. And therefore, I will actually ask that shrines are related to mobility in the urban world. And I will distinguish three types of mobility which the shrines actually, shall we say, cater to. Three ways or three forms, three modes of mobility the shrines are specifically helping with. And this is one, what I call cultural mobility. The shrines help to negotiate and to live in a world with cultural and religious diversity. They help to live in a context where Hindus and Catholics and Muslims and people from all over the world meet. That's one, cultural mobility. Second, I say, is social mobility. The shrine helps to the concerns and the needs of a sociologically diversifying society. So people from different castes, people from different classes, the rich and the poor, the caste of the Brahmins and the caste of the Dalits or the untouchables. All of them kind of can approach these shrines, something which is not happening in the church and in the temples. There they are kind of segregated. But in the shrines they all can participate, they even can origin these shrines, they start building it. Karnataka Kalega come here, they work on a certain work site, when they go they leave behind a little shrine where they did their daily puja. And that shrine grows over time, and so you have shrines are augmenting. Social mobility is the second kind of mobility I'm talking about. Also a rapidly changing social status of people. People who gain now urban lifestyles. People who travel. People who are engaged in cross-cultural marriages. People who live in UK but come to Goa over, say, Easter break or something. For those people who are in a sociologically rapidly changing pattern, the new middle class, urban middle class, for them shrines are especially appealing. That's what I'm saying. Finally, a third mode of mobility is very, very down to earth. It's very practical. Shrines are considered significant in the context of physical mobility. That means in a tremendously increasing motorized traffic. You will see things old, shrines and their inhabitants, if you want so, Catholic or Hindu, were good for protecting you when you travel. Nowadays, this is even more. Now that the hazard of traveling in Goa with all the traffic and the increase of vehicles is getting more, you will find shrines dedicated to precisely this hazard. So, that's my argument. Three mobilities are kind of reflected in the shrines: cultural mobility, social mobility, and mobility in traffic. These are the three things. Okay, I move on. I have talked about that. Now I show you some typical shrines so that you know what I'm actually talking about. This is a typical Catholic cross at a crossroads. I'm sure the Goan students may know where it is. It is right here when you enter the highway at Medical College, right there at that critical corner where, you know, you come from a small road and you enter the highway. It's actually terribly difficult to negotiate your traveling at this place. Anyway, there is this is a typical Hindu shrine. Now you architectural students and anybody will see what I mean. They are small, no? They are not big structures. So that is a typical shrine, and it's right in the middle of Margau market at the day when this shrine has its annual festivity going on. So you see, they feed their gods well, and they put light for them to make them feel good, if you want so. This is another shrine, again a Hindu shrine, which typical outlay here. It's a Shiva, which is there. I brought this shrine actually to show you the location, which again shows you, I talked about this liminal location. So this is the shrine at Betim Ferry Point, on the Betim side. So that means, again, this is one of these liminal locations when you step from the land onto the boat to cross the river, which is considered a little dangerous. So you better have a protector here. And you can be sure many people who are having faith in these shrines, before they enter that boat, they go there and they do this when they step on the boat, because that gives them a feeling of protection. You see, the shrine also, one other landmark, often comes with trees. Trees are all seeds of sacrality and divinity in India. So the shrine is under the tree, and right where the ferry starts, here you go into the ferry, just to give you an idea about this location. That is another Catholic shrine, very simple, just in the middle, a very simple cross here, right in the middle of the market in Margau. That is a shrine now which says something about what I want to talk earlier, evolution. Some of the shrines start growing, becoming big, becoming like churches and temples. They are not churches and temples, they are shrines, but they are getting big. That's what I want to talk about. This is just one example. This is a central place in Panjin down Miramar. You know that place, no? The circle of Miramar. You have this thing, which is a shrine, and which had actually the format, and also the draws, you can say, the number of devotees it draws goes into the dimension of the temple rather than the small shrine. I'm talking about persistence and innovation. Why do they persist in an environment which is actually odd, and how do they persist? You see how they persist? This is National Highway number 17 that connects Trivandrum with Mumbai and eventually Delhi. That shrine didn't move out of that highway. That shrine did not move out. So the traffic has to maneuver around, and it's sometimes really a bottleneck. But that's what I mean by persistence. That shrine doesn't move. And there are a lot of cases pending, by the way, in Goan courts, where people want to move it, and then the others go in and they make a case that it shall not be moved. Some of them are moved eventually, some of them are moved in that, conservative way that they take every stone of that, number it, move it to the side and build it up again. Something of that happens. This all is part of my argument of persistence. Here again, shrine in the middle of traffic, so to speak. It's a place called Neru, if I'm not mistaken. And again, you see right at the crossroad. Here is the way going, here's the way going, here's the way going. Again, a tree, a very typical location at a crossroad where these shrines usually are and where they persist to be. This is not quite right for my argument, but the picture was too nice because it's not a shrine, it's a church. But anyway, my argument, that is an exception. You find also a church and other religious structures persisting. But because it was so illustrative of what I mean to say, that they persist, even if modern traffic comes. This is somewhere, I was just corrected by Professor Sequeira, it's actually in Calangute already. That's right in the tourist zone there, and where, well, I think the picture speaks for itself. The shrine didn't give way, even though now thousands of tourists need that road to travel every day. The shrine didn't give way. Another shrine which didn't give way is that shrine of Margau. You see that huge flyover? We saw that shrine before the flyover was there. And I show you a detail of its multi-religiosity, which is interesting. But what I just wanted to show, they rather had told that engineer who made that bridge, you see that that pillar comes at some other corner because you cannot put it there. There is that shrine. The shrine persisted. even in a heavily changing urban design, if you want. So that's my argument. That is my argument about innovation. Some of the shrines take on new shapes where they kind of fit into a new urban. Isn't that modern? Isn't that even postmodern? There you have a way how shrines adapt to a changing architectural design, right? And here it is taken from another side. Actually, that is something which I call the templification of shrines. That means that is how shrines slowly evolve into temples. Doesn't it have the appeal of a temple or of a temple-like structure already? You see where it is going to. I keep my eye open and travel there every year and take another click, because I'm pretty sure one day I will come and there will be construction work going on, and that thing will be a little bigger and little bigger and little bigger. However, the major intention of that picture, of these pictures, are, how shall we say, adapting modernist architectural design. Again, in the middle of the traffic, a very ancient cross. They call this Kudis here in Konkani, very ancient cross. In the middle of the traffic, it didn't give way. That's what I have to show. Now I'm talking about contiguity, which means basically neighboring shrines, and hybridity, which means basically transgressing the boundaries of religions. So I'm now here in my argument about shrines are facilitating an environment which is culturally diverse, where there are multiple religions sharing. This is one of my favorite pictures. It shows a twin shrine in the Mapsa market, one of the markets in Bardes. It shows a twin shrine. You see, again, neighboring, sharing the space around the tree. On the one side, you have Sri Dev Burgeshwar. This is one other of the shrine gods which have come up. I'll talk more about him. Sri Dev Burgeshwar shares one side of the tree, and Our Lady of Vairankani takes the other side of the tree. That is what I mean by contiguity. That is what I mean that the shrines actually compete over one and the same spot. The spot was sacred. So two religions want to come back, or want to take it, so to speak. It has a history to it. I cannot go into it. The history is basically that in early modernity, Hindus were driven out of that Catholic part of Goa. So they were going out, and Catholics were taking precisely those places where the Hindus had their temples and they had their small gumti, that's how these grotto-shaped shrines are called. There, the Catholics, the Portuguese, put their religious monuments, Catholic monuments. However, over time, in the 19th century, change of political overall, Hindus were coming back. Hindus were taking the same places they were always taking before. However, Catholics were already there. So you have these twin shrines. They just sit next to each other because they share the same ancient, what I call spatio-religious system. This is a hybrid cross. This is a multi-religious cross, which I just want to show. There are some typical Catholics. There is San Francis Xavier, patron saint of Goa, by the way, the largest of the Catholic saints. And there, here, it's hard to see, to show. There are some Hindu gurus, if you want. So that also makes somebody from the neighborhood, a Hindu, who would be a devout follower of that Hindu guru, must have put this image here to make him also part of that public urban space. It goes on like that. This is again contiguity. No? I talked about Hindus moving out, coming back, all taking the same spots, the same sacred spots. This is also here. My argument, however, is it is predominantly there in the urban space, even though this is not an old pattern. This is a little Hanuman shrine, and this is another Kudis, where again you would have the churchification now of a Catholic shrine. If we speak about the templification of Hindu shrines, We can speak about the churchification of Catholic shrines. This slowly grows into a larger structure, and we will see what goes out of it. This is again contiguity. You remember that structure? It's Donna Powell, the central circle there. You have a Hindu shrine here. You also have a major Catholic cross here. So again, the two want to occupy, they find space in one and the same locality, and they are contiguous, as I call it. This is the shrine that is underneath the flyover in Margao. You remember that huge structure, the flyover underneath the shrine. What I show here, again, you cannot identify it so clearly, but clearly it is a multiple religious shrine. Some would call it lateral worship, means side by side, lateral, side by side. Others call it syncretic worship, whatever this word is in the tricky, where people actually cross the boundary and do worship to a place, to a figure, to an image which does not belong to their tradition. Syncretism. Things of that sort are happening here. You find Christ, you find Krishna, you find the Kaaba, mind that here, you find the Muslim icon here, you find Sai Baba, you find Durga, you find Saraswati, and so on. This is all part of what I call a religious, a hybrid or multi-religious site or monument in Goa. You find many of them. This is a special thing. This is another of these multi-religious hybrid sites where you have the Kaaba, Islam, you have Sai Baba, I'll talk about him in a minute, a very, very popular Hindu saint, actually to be correct, Hindu-Muslim saint, because he's half Muslim, half Hindu. Here again his icon. And here you have Our Lady of Vailankani, you may remember that Mary which was there in the market. Why I'm showing you that? Because it is associated to a very modern urban profession. So in urban professional life, these hybrid monuments are especially prone to come up. This is a taxi driver's shrine, right? So taxi drivers are those who are the patrons who carry on and entertain these kind of shrines. And you go and ask them and you get all sorts of explications. They will say, well, you see, I'm a Hindu, that is my colleague who also sits here. He's a Muslim, so shouldn't he also have something here, and so on. The other one would say, well, we have all our customers are either Hindus or either Catholics, so we want to have a protection sort of thing in our cars for all of them. That is what I say in a modern, global, even postmodern, multi-religious environment, you do something to take care about that. They do it in a professional way. Again, another taxi driver shrine in near Mandovi Hotel. Again, you see some typical, you have the tiles, Shiva and God and Christ and the Kaaba. You have Ganesha, you have Our Lady of Vailankani, again, I'll talk about her. You have a specific Goan saint, Father Agnello. He is important because he is one of those saints. There are a few saints which are not taken from the universal Catholic Vatican governed world, but they are from Goa. And this is one. This is Father Agnello. This is a Goan saint. That's why he's here. And in the back again you have Shirdi Sai Baba, the one I have shown you. These, you will see the two, Shirdi Sai Baba and Our Lady of Vailankani, they are coming up in this urban environment all the time. This is a shop in the urban area. In fact, it's in Taligaw. You see, it stands for itself. It's a shop. The shopkeeper is, I think, Muslim. However, he has either a lot of Catholic clients, or maybe the shop itself, which he rents, is from a Catholic. And he says, well, you don't remove this Mary here and this Christ, because they are actually not so much a picture. They live here. They are from here. The connection of these icons, or idols that I call it, with the places is more than just a representation that sits somewhere. It is an iconic, it's an iconic relationship. The place is the same, and vice versa. I move on, and I'll talk about these two figures. which are especially prone. Am I still good in time, or?
Yeah, you have at least 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes more.
10 minutes?
15. 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah, and then we can have a discussion.
We want to have a discussion.
A little, at least question and answer session.
So I have to go a little rush. These are the two ones you saw most often, right? They are the ones that are most often present in the urban space. And they are most likely to attract what I call this lateral or syncretic worship. They are multi-religious figures. Sai Baba. Sai Baba. Sai Baba. Sai Baba. Maybe I leave him here because he looks most urban in this setup. Let me tell you something about Sai Baba. Let me tell you something. I read this out for you to be a little quicker. Shirdi Sai Baba was born in 1872 in Shirdi, a town in central Maharashtra, where he lived the life of a religious ascetic and became recognized and worshipped as a saint for his siddhis, or supernatural powers. Shirdi Sai Baba. Our Lady of Vailakani, I see I have this mixed up in my text, so I show you some. Shirdi Sai Baba. Our Lady of Vailakani. Down there is a small icon that is a Hindu god. This is from Margao. She is one of the major figures worshipped among Catholics. This is Damodar. This is the Ramdev. This is the village god of that city. So they share the same little shrine harmoniously. This is again Vailakani, as you see, typical with the baby Jesus. This is a somewhat enigmatic picture which I found, and I still ponder and wonder what it is. Is it a sati? Is it a burning Hindu widow in the fire? You Goan students, if you know what this really is, tell me. But if it is a sati, why is she keeping her hair open, which is actually not really what Hindu women are doing? I am not sure. I see this, however, as a multi-religious composition. Here again, one shrine inside said about Vailakani. This is another shrine of this multitude. There again, Vailakani, and down there is Shanta Durga Kunkolkarin, a very famous Hindu goddess in So now I read out the profile of these two saints, Shirdi Sai Baba and Our Lady of Vailakani. Shirdi Sai Baba, born in a central Maharashtrian town, lived the life of a religious ascetic, became recognized for his supernatural powers. Our Lady of Vailakani, also known as Our Lady of Good Health, represents an incorporation of the Christian Mary, who, according to legend, manifested herself in a series of apparitions and miracles in the 16th, 17th centuries in Vailakani, a small town in Tamil Nadu. Closer look reveals certain similarities between the two, which suggests that urban shrines gain their popularity, among other things, by allowing for what I call devotional fluidity and diversity. First of all, both saints have a distinctly charismatic appeal, a reputation of miraculous powers that radiates beyond their respective home region. One may argue with Max Weber that it is precisely this charismatic power, detached from any specific genealogy or territory that gives them special authority to the two saints. In other words, they are predestined to become autonomous spiritual patrons, functioning largely independently from the territorial confines and social order associated with village gods and patron saints. I'll stop here. The point to be made is that they are charismatic, and charismatic means you have a power which is not related to your genealogy. You don't inherit charisma. Charisma you have because you are personally convincing and strong. You are not a charismatic leader because your father was a king. You are a charismatic leader because you are just emerging and you are strong. So that is something that is appealing to a diverse population, which cannot pursue their roots, their clan history, their local attachment, but who search out for an independent kind of figure, to which they can develop a personal relationship. So what I'm saying is, they are good in the urban environment because they allow for personal, individual connection. You are not connected to them because they belong somehow to your caste. You are not connected to them because you belong to the village where they are patron saints. You be connected with them because you like them. That's what it is. And that's what, in the Hindu terminology, you have a word for that. It's called Ishtadev. It's a chosen deity. So they are therefore strong because they allow you personal attachment with an independent sainthood. I'll go on quickly. What I want to show you now, social dynamics. How and why are certain of the shrines really appealing to a fast-changing middle-class population, which does not have its established root in the Gaon-Kari system, students will know, but who come from everywhere, who are entrepreneurs, who make big business and have a lot of money. Now they also want to have a powerful religious representation. The shrines and the divine personalities attached to the shrines most likely lend themselves to become central figure, representational figures for this, you can call it, nouveau rich, modern, middle class, elite, coming from all parts of the world, having relations with all parts of the world. Therefore, some of the shrines where this modern mobility moves in the strongest, through money, through patronage, through construction work, do an enormous evolution. So I'll show you two shrines which were so small and become so big. See that? This is Cross of Bambuli. I'm again sure many of the students here will know what that is. It's a cross called Fulanzokulis, means flower cross. It's attached, it's attributed with a lot of miraculous power. And it was, unfortunately, I don't have a picture from its origin, but its origin was just that. One of these wayside crosses. Just a simple white structure. I have seen it myself, but I didn't realize that this is going to change in so fast. So I didn't take photograph in the first time I saw it. I think it was 1990 when it was there, just a cross, but you could see that remarkably many people come and put flowers and pray and touch and kiss. You see that. When I came back a few years later, it already grown and it has gotten now a structure. It's inside here. I'm sorry I can't show it to you. It's kind of hidden. But it's here, inside. So they have given it a little structure already. And you see the construction work going on? You see the heap of sand here? It's going to be big because they want to make it really big. So out of that became that. That is what it is today. So from the kulis to that, it's that what you have. And it's on the highway. Again, here is our liminal position. It's at the entrance, actually, you can say it's at the border of Panjim city. Before you enter with your fast Maruti car, you have to cross that thing. And many of the fast Maruti car drivers, they go by and they do something like this, or something like this. Or they stop even and put a flower, or something like that. This is happening. This is how it looks inside. Another evolution story. This is that shrine, you remember Sri Dev Bodgeshwar, who had the twin shrine in Mapsa sitting on the one side and Vailakani on the other side? This is Sri Dev Bodgeshwar's place, and most likely it started like that, without all these modern buildings. It was just a tree. I told two old people who told me in 1930 this was just a tree, and then sometimes some yellow flag come up. Some people do some incense, some people start doing something. My argument with the growing, prosperous middle class of Mapsa, this undergo an evolution which made it first into a little bigger structure. This is, by the way, a photograph I bought from the photographic shop at the annual festival day, where they sell all this. So the montage is theirs. It shows now that little tree has become a little structure here. You see that? This is a doorway, and this is a small temple. And this is probably the icon which they now put inside. Small icon, Sri Buddheshwar. They put him inside, and he's that guardian guard. You see, he has big shoes, he has a danda, he has a stick, he has a torch to show you the way in the light, in the night. He is that protector. Now it's that. This is what has come out of that tree worship. And mind that for the, you know, the sense of, what shall we call this? The sense of roots. We have this modern word which would be the sense of authenticity, but I don't think people think in that category. The sense of rootedness means that the tree is still there. They built the temple around the tree, let it open here, protruding, so the tree grows out of the temple, because the tree and the zago, the space, is important. You cannot just do away with it, even if you build a big temple. Again, festival. Again, here. This is the figure today. Here is the tree. There is the tree. So there you have this big figure. This is his Utsaf Murti. That when he take him out to travel through the village, so they have a small Murti, then he travels and so on and so forth. I am almost through, and my final point is actually very simple. I said this to you. Since ancient time, these figures are known and famous for protecting you while traveling, while crossing those boundaries, right? While going on the ship, while going on an air flight, and so on. And therefore, not surprisingly, the shrines and their representations come up at each and every corner in Goa, which is somehow associated to travel. Especially you find them, I couldn't document this, in any travel agent you will have it. You'll find it at any bus station, you'll find it in any taxi, you'll find it at any train station, you'll find it everywhere where it is about traveling. So here are just a few pictures. Taxi stand, I showed you already. There they are. This is bus stand. Here it is the Hindu shrine. There's a Catholic chapel, big chapel, which of course also has to be at the bus stand. Taxi driver stand again. Proudly they always have the shrine and they open it for me. Yeah, please take a photograph. This is also since old. The boats all have to have this. I mean, we know this from our European history, don't we? On every boat or ship, you have to have this patroness or patron figure who protects you. It is here the same. The ships are dedicated to the same sanctities. Every bus has to be sort of dedicated to Sri Buddheshwar, Sri Ganesh. You know, two better than one. Here you have the multi-religious setting again. That is my Sai Baba here, Vailam Khani. This is Jesus Christ. And okay, I am through with that. What I'm saying, maybe I'll quickly read out a few lines. Is that okay? One more minute. My summary, so to speak.
We have time. It's just that we can have a question answer session,
yeah,
so people
I'm
can.
Happy. And I'm also too. I mean, I don't want to take your time too much. We know that. I read you out my conclusion. Okay. This is a car repair. Also car repair, you need him to be present. When they change your brake fluid, you want some spiritual entity to be there as well. For everything. Well, here's my conclusion. You have heard it, I was trying to say it. This is the more polished one that came in the article. The religiosity dedicated to wayside shrines in Goa's cities has modified and transformed the century-old spatio-religious system centering on Hindu Grama Devata, village gods, and Catholic patron saints to fit the condition of late modern city life. In particular, a culturally diversifying, socially changing, and geographically fluctuating population engaged with a variety of personalized deities and saints whose charismatic authority is not only quite independent from formalized local social hierarchies, but also cuts across the orthodox divisions between religious traditions. Moreover, the shrines and the tutelary beings believed to reside in them have become sites for the articulation of concerns emerging from the increasing hazards of urban motorized traffic and provide some reassurance against them. The shrines express and enact a form of religiosity that proves to be especially apt for cities in which cultural, social, and motorized mobility mutually enhance each other in the generation of a rapidly changing modern world. Refuting earlier modernist and Marxist theories, the urban shrines also supply evidence that religion stands its ground publicly in modernity. This evidence does not add to the concern, if not alarmist report of a late modern increase in religious intolerance, conflict, and violence, but rather reveals the less dramatic and therefore often missed qualities of a religiosity that mediates and reconciles cultural and social difference and appeases rapid change. The qualities have also gained these qualities have also gained distinctly modern features by simultaneously narrowing and widening traditional. I'll skip that, it's too complicated. Well, the last point I made was that overall, these shrines also testify that the once upon a time prediction made in the 1980s, shared uniquely and curiously by Marxists and modernists, that religion would slowly go out of the public space. It would slowly become only a personal item. This is not happening. Religion is very much there in the public space, and I argue even at the core of modernity, it is there and it remains there, and the shrines are the evidence that I have for that. Thank you for your attention.
You have presented us very interesting, really, a sort of multi-religious space. Are there also situations of conflicts and competition between the different religions? Have you pictures or something?
There are, of course, also evidences of conflicts, and I would actually say that, yeah, if you would want to focus on them, you could find pictures that you can interpret in that way. Rather than I never, for example, thanks God, let's say, or let me put it that way. Goa is actually proud to be a thousands of Ayodhyas, right? Why? Because there are all these ancient 16th century churches, and they are all built on places where there were temples. So potentially, this could be an explosion of communist violence. Thanks God, and thanks to the Goan people who have managed not to this to happen, we should emphasize in the first place that Goa has avoided that kind of conflict, which Ayodhya, I don't know, do you Italian people have heard about Ayodhya? Maybe not. Ayodhya is a North Indian city where there was an ancient Muslim mosques. And then around the 1970s, 80s, Hindu nationalists came and they would say, this is the place where there was before a Hindu temple, a Rama temple. And we want this temple to come back. And on it goes, and it went into a very serious conflict. When was the demolition? In 1992, a mob of fanatic Hindu nationalists went in, destroyed that mosque, and wanted to make a temple. At least at that time, late enough, I would would say. Government went in and said, no, stop this. Now it is a kind of off-limits ground, nobody is allowed to go there. However, the fundamentalist history of India, which you may have in mind, very much revolves around such kind of spatial issues. Again, I repeat myself, I'm happy to report that Goa, with the potential of it actually being there, has been a very, very haven of harmony thing. What you would find and what you will find is competition. So just yesterday, my wife and myself, we went to the place where this enormous Kulansu is coming up. Coincidentally, across the street now there is a temple coming up. You know, so there is competition. But in this spatial aspect, I have never heard that Hindus went against Catholic churches or vice versa. I'm happy to report that. Just, I'm not making it up. It's not that dreamlike situation which we sometimes want to have.
But there is the RSS is very active in Goa, no? You would say the RSS is a right-wing Hindu fundamentalist body, and there are all kinds of stories and arguments and narratives of potential conflict all the time. So it is, while the harmony is the dominant culture, there are groups which often tend to be very disruptive. In some places there have been riots also.
It is impossible for the Muslims to buy a graveyard. In the whole of South Goa, they cannot buy a graveyard for the last 5 years. There are places in East Hanwatan and Shiroda. Maybe from Shiroda again.
But see, the Hindu-Christian dominates the story, but the Muslim community is still very small in Goa. But even they find it very difficult to assert themselves in this grand theatre of churches and temples. And so that is definitely
a crosses in Shiroda. There have been cases where crosses have been demolished.
Yeah.
It's there.
Okay.
Simmering, but not in a major way. It's not.
Okay.
I have two, three small questions, very silly questions, but it helps us to understand why some of the shrines have iron grills and some don't have. We don't understand because the cows, because the animals, because the robbers, because one is stupid. The second is you have shrines on the street, along the highways, and women, children, old people, do they go? Is it socially accepted that women and children and families go and put flowers there, or it's a male cult? Because the taxi driver and the women are perhaps out in the streets. And third, another silly question is, in Italy, from 10-15 years onward, we see that every place where there is a car accident and people die, there are small shrines, private shrines. That is, first when I was young, there was not. It was a car accident and people died and then it's over. And now people tend to put cross and flowers and keep a sort of private cult. And so as you were speaking about the highways and streets and main streets and traffic accidents, I say, because the shrines protect people from accidents. Do they build shrines in a spot where an accident was, and then first was the private memory and then became some other thing? That's what my key question.
Thank you. Thank you for this question.
Just to help for us what we are looking at, because your presentation was very well done, so we understood your ideas, but we need some small.
I'm happy to answer whatever I can. First question was, why do some of the shrines have a railing around and others have not? And I think the first part of the answer you have already given. It's really often about the cows. That's one thing. It could be a most simple, practical thing. Cows love flowers, so they would always go and they so that's one thing. And very often there is some food items given there, bananas given. So you have cows and other animals coming. That's one. I would say, however, also in some places you would have a political issue. The railings are perhaps also a sign that there is an intention of expanding. So they claim more space, and before they allow, I just read in the paper about a month ago, Goa government made a survey and they found there are no less than 830 illegal, what they call illegal religious structures. So many of that shrines, they are competing with the government. They don't have authority to do it here. So before you build, you make a step like making your fence a little bigger, and then you sit and wait. Nobody looking, nobody coming. Oh, then you make it a little bigger, you sit and wait. That's how it is. That's another way why you have the ratings. Then your second question was...
About the children, families,
that's right.
women,
that's right.
They are allowed to go to the school.
And there again, I'm glad to answer, or according to my theory, that's precisely what it is. Question was, are these shrines open to all, say, all social strata and genders and so on? Are children, are women, are they allowed? I would say most likely they are. And they are less restricted in social, caste, etc. terms than any of the temples and the shrines. Many of the temples are still based, or are based anyway, all of the temples are somehow based on a local hierarchy of either seniority, who settled first, and who has a right in the temple, or caste, who is higher, who is lower. Many of these shrines somehow, I'm not saying that these shrines are egalitarian paradises. They are not. They are also shot through with sometimes with intentions and ambitions and conflicts. But generally speaking, the setup of the shrines is much more quasi-egalitarian.
You can walk as a woman, you can walk on the street.
You can walk there.
Okay.
There are other restrictions with the shrines, which are more of a very general devotional matter. You should, if you are with the Hindu shrine, and you want to do something, you should remove your footwear. That is acknowledging the sacrality of the place. But otherwise, I would argue shrines are remarkably socially open for all, access of all, and that's what makes them appealing. Even the larger shrines are open for Karnataka labor, to talk about one most stigmatized group in Goa, who are not supposed to settle here forever, and who are this, and who come from a labor class background, and so even these people manage to establish shrines or go to shrines. That's what I'm saying. And the third question was
accident.
Was about the accident
and process, or
you said in Italy, and I know it from Spain and Portugal, even from Germany, we have this custom when people, sometimes somebody has a serious accident or even dies, some of the religious...
It's recent in Italy.
It's a recent.
Yeah, so many processes of the road.
I found it actually wherever I come throughout the Catholic world. I'm teaching at Arizona State University, I travel to Mexico, you find the same thing. And what I can confirm, it's similar in Goa here. Many of the shrines, many of the Hindu shrines and the Catholic crosses are in one way or the other related to personal stories about accident, about illnesses, about miraculous cures and all that. Or also just for memorizing. So that's very much the same. That's very much the same.
And just a little gender equity in Goa is more than in many other parts of the country.
Yes, that's
so you can see.
So we arrived yesterday, so
I mean, near the airport, there is a petrol pump entirely manned by women. So compared to other parts of the country, there is a little more equity.
That's why.
Yeah, exactly. The questions were there.
Yes, just one last question. Also very practical, very not question, but technician can do in this case. I mean, how they can earn the money for financing those kind of expansion? I mean, I've been really impressed by that small cross becoming in the end, after that kind of garage, but behind it already the pillars in concrete and in the end this huge building. I mean, since it all they start, I mean, they can be founded for the Hindu shrines, for example, even by untouchables or at least humble people, and maybe they are related to personal facts like illness or accidents and things. I mean, it's stunning to me to think about the fact that many people get affected to this and maybe can finance just with personal offers.
Yeah, that's again a very interesting thing. If you were to pursue and research the economy of these shrines, you would find, and I would hope, you find something that confirms my argument that it is a very fluid and a very heterogeneous economy. Again, it's not an established economy. In the sense, talking about Fulan Tsukuris, that evolution of the small cross into a big church. I went and I asked the priest in charge, and he would tell me things like that. You know, first there were these devotees who stopped and who would give a few coins and then maybe a bill, 10 rupees and this. And then there was a camp coming up with, there is next to that shrine, there is a military camp. Then these people from the military would go, they give also, maybe a little more. Then across the street there is medical college, no? Big, the largest medical facility in Goa. They also would come. They become all devotees of that. So you have a very heterogeneous thing. Then a very entertaining priest. Enterprising, sorry, not entertaining. You maybe was yes.
You were a theatrist.
Enterprising priest took this under his wing, so to speak. And you know what he did? He tapped on the resources of the many villagers who went there and who now went for migrant labor to the Gulf. So these people have really money. So he tapped on them. If I show you the souvenir, when this church was consecrated into, the cross was consecrated into a church, you find a long list of Dubai and Kuwait and wherever based people who now got into this big money. That's how it became. Again, my argument, you have a globalized, heterogeneous, urban sort of population behind the economy. The same I could show you for Bodheshwar, the Hindu god. You have a very diversified and very prosperous, successful, nouveau rich, middle class society in that market town of Napsa, which to make at least once in a while a link for the tourist studies, who benefited a lot from the tourist boom there, got money from there, invested into that place. So you have very much a fluid local economy behind. That's right. Please.
What about young people and religion here?
Yeah.
Do they attend for these places or not?
It's a good question, you know.
What is it?
She asked, what about young people? Are young people involved in religion?
What age?
What age? Well, what is young to your, according
child
to
or
your age? We're talking about
youth.
Yeah, 20, 30, that's fine. Well, I think so, no? In Goa, and I don't know, can I say in India, I don't know. I find, at least let me put it that way. My German experience, if I go to a Catholic church in Germany, you will find only people 50 plus there. This is not the same here. So
no, why don't one of the young people of your age answer?
The students
well, let them answer, yeah. Let me ask, here's the suggestion from the Italian professor. Is anybody of you somehow also, do you have shrines in your village? Do you go there? Is that something you are familiar with? You are. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody wants to share a personal story about the shrine in your village? You are most welcome to tell us. I mean, these are our guests from Italy. They would probably love to hear something. What kind of experiences you have with shrines, or what you can say, or can you say something? For example, maybe I'll ask you that question. Do the shrines also persist in the tourist zone? Is tourism doing away with the shrines, or do the shrines also live on in the tourist area? What would you say?
I come from a place called Chandor, and there is a temple, generational temple. It was actually a mountain hill, and then they started worshipping the hill. And then they came up with a temple there, and now it's become into a tourist spot. So first it was worship place, and now it's converted into tourist.
I see.
Where is We can't.
Chandreshwar temple, it's in Parvata.
What is the name of the temple?
Chandreshwar temple.
Chandreshwar. So it began as a temple and now it's a tourist spot.
What do you mean a tourist spot?
Because now because of the worship, there are so many people coming. They have become so famous that it's still coming like Goa and other things.
I see. Interesting. Very good. Yeah. Tell us some stories about shrines that you have.
Okay. In my religion, Tibet, we have a deity. Yeah, we have a village deity. Very interesting. The patron saint for the Catholics is John the Baptist. There's a very interesting story I came to know recently. There were people, migrant laborers from other parts of Goa, from a village in Karamboli, actually, which is near Old Goa, who used to come and work there. When they went back there to settle, back in their villages, they were not allowed to settle back. So they stole the statue, the patron saint, and brought it to Pilen, which is my village, and they made him the patron saint there. This happened 300 years ago. Then there is a local deity, she's an Our Lady, who's supposed to have been attributed miraculous powers. Every feast day happened last Sunday. It is celebrated by Hindus. Hindus celebrate the Catholic Day. They celebrate it. And this Kuris, the cross, the Bambali cross, apparently my grandmother is supposedly supposed to have born. Her mother was supposed to have conceived because of a promise made in that cross. And just a few weeks ago, a friend, I mean speaking about young people, one of my friends, before he proposed to his girlfriend, he first went there.
No, it seems to be very much alive among young people.
Solano owes his existence to the cross.
Yes.
There's also a new wave of new age religion, which is very popular all over the country. So yoga, spirituality, gurus, this has become very trendy now. There are all kinds of ashrams and in pockets also of Goa now called the tourist economy. You actually have these traveling yoga retreats which come on the coast, on the beach side. So there is that wave of religiosity, which is very new age and very familiar, I'm sure, in Europe also.
Well, taking it on into a global perspective, we do see this. The term I'm from a religious studies department. It's religious resurgence. So religion is coming back, sort of, in many parts of the world. Religion is coming back, especially after being said dead in the 1980s. Now there's great surprise how much I can see that at all corners. Yeah. Of course, here in Goa it never went.